So first, let's get into this bucket. So this is my dog's bucket, and I've got a number of items in there. For me, it's just really handy to have everything. I've got, you know, extra sets of everything essentially. So that means that I'm not going to forget anything. I've got everything organised in his box. When we go camping, I've got a tub for my kitchen stuff, I've got a tub for my bedding stuff, and I've got a tub for his stuff as well. There's a couple of things that I don't have in here, and that would be like his coat. He's also got a buoyancy vest and things like that, and they really come when, you know, the need arises. So if I'm camping in winter, or if I know he's going to be in the water, then I might take those things. So this, as a general rule, is just most of the things that I would always have with me when camping with dogs. First, nice, good, sturdy metal bowl. It's got a silicone base, this one. It's actually from a local store, Kmart. It was quite cheap, to be honest. And again, you know, you've got bowls at home, but make sure you've always got a bowl for when you're out camping. For his water, I generally just have a bucket. I always leave a bucket under my tap on the camper trailer, or wherever whatever I'm using for water. And that essentially just means that I'm not wasting water. You know, if you're washing your hands and that sort of stuff, it all falls into the bucket, and he's always got something to drink. Bandanas, for me it's important. It's just another way of recognising him. You know, sometimes you might be out, you might have a couple of different border collies. Not that it's going to be difficult to recognise my own border collie, but I also find it handy for if it gets hot, you can wet it up a little bit, just a little bit of moisture and dampness around the neck. If I've got bug and insect repellent and that sort of stuff, I can soak this or put this in it or spray it on it, so it's not directly on his skin. If I do need to grab him quickly, that's relatively loose around his neck, so it's easy to grab. Make sure it is loose around his neck, so just in case it gets snagged or anything, it does come off easily. I've usually got a couple of bandanas, and he's got his nice new one from Layko, which is, look him up on Instagram actually. That was a friend that started up a little business, so a little plug there for Layko. Doggy boots, so these are relatively cheap doggy boots. I've never actually used them, but it is important to have, because you don't know where you're camping, and I have been to environments where, you know, there's a lot of spiky bindies and that sort of stuff that we get here in Australia. So hot ground, you know, you go out in the desert, and if the sun's been baking on the ground for, you know, weeks and weeks, and it's going to be an absolute scorcher. So to protect his paws, obviously occasionally you might need those. A muzzle, as much as I hate these things, essentially there's a lot of poison baiting, so I think it's the 1080 baits that are dropped around farmlands and parks and that sort of stuff, especially out in the desert. Now, you might not necessarily be in an area that's immediately exposed to the 1080 baits, but one of the things that can happen is a bird can actually pick up the bait, flies off with it, realise what it is, and doesn't taste very good, drops it in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it's right in front of your dog. So definitely worth getting something to protect, and it's more that if you're going to have them loose or not always inside, or if you're just worried about a dog that just scoffs absolutely everything, quite important really to make sure that he's got a muzzle that he can't eat out of. I've got lots of snacks in here. There's lots of treats, and to be honest I actually stocked up with a bit more treats, and didn't realise how many I actually had in here. So, you know, good idea to make sure you have plenty of treats. With his food, I bag them up individually, so I've just got these freezer bags essentially, and I will freeze up his individual portions. Doesn't look like much, but my dog, as a general rule, try not to feed him too much, as he's you know, a bit chunky as it is. But I'll bag one of those up obviously for each day. Always make sure you've got a couple extra just in case you get stuck out somewhere, and you know, again, you know, with a heap of treats and stuff, just to make sure that you've got extra food, because it's Australia. You don't know where you're going to be in the middle of nowhere, your car breaks down, your days from communication or you know, any support. You want to make sure that you've got enough food for yourself and enough food for your dog. Okay, so next we've got here is backpack. Look, I might do a separate review at some stage on this. Let me know if you want to see a little bit more. But this was, look, it was a cheap one off, I think, at eBay or Amazon. I can't remember exactly where I got it. And I actually had it for my previous dog, and I've had to do some adjustments for this dog because he's a bit chunkier. And it's a backpack basically, and essentially it means if we go hiking or anything like that, you know, out on a day trip, he can carry his own water, you know, a couple of snacks and that sort of thing. And it just, you know, gives him a little bit of responsibility, if you like, and he doesn't seem to mind it. You know, I haven't really kind of trained him too much with the backpack, but, you know, put it on him a couple of times and he seems fine with it, to be honest. Some dogs may struggle a little bit, so if you're going to get into something like that, I definitely recommend possibly trialing your dog, you know, at home and just get him used to wearing it, basically. You know, doggy bags, always make sure you've got some doggy bags. If you can get biodegradable, definitely an advantage. And do pick up your dog's poo when you're out. I know it's out in the wilderness and so forth, but it can contaminate the area and there's bugs and stuff in it, so it can affect the wild animals in the area, so it's definitely recommended to pick up your poop. Still got a whole heap of snacks, and look, I've got a chain, and yeah, look, not everybody's going to be in favour of chains, and you know, look, I'm not a fan of chaining my dog up either. He's actually, like I said, level 7 obedience, so he's fully trained and full obedience trained, that is. You know, doesn't always do everything I want him to do, but I know that I've got good control over him. So I do highly recommend that you chain your dog up or you tether him at night. It is really important if you haven't got him on a lead during the day. And I basically just use a chain and a nice big heavy duty peg. That means that if he gets, you know, something happens and he needs to pull his way out, he's still going to be able to pull his way out. As a general rule, he's not a puller, so he won't tug that out unless it's really necessary. But what it means though is at night, if there's animals around, I know that he's not going to chase them because he doesn't sleep with me. I'm in the camper trailer and I can't get him up top, so it means that I've got to make sure he's secure and safe at night and he's not going to run off anywhere because he's seen something in the distance that could potentially be exciting to him. So look, there are a few of the things that I have in my dog's bucket of things, and I highly recommend, you know, like I said, being organised to make sure that you've always got everything you need, because last thing you want is to get out there and get stuck. So what are some of the things you need to know when camping with your dogs in Australia? Well, national parks for starters, no go for dogs. Often you can't even leave them in the car. I've been to some parks where they don't even allow you to drive through the national parks, so just be aware of that. State parks, as a general rule, you can have dogs in most cases, but there's a, you know, Deltworth site and Parks Victoria in Victoria, obviously, and look at your local authorities in your local state. There's rules and regulations, and most of those parks will tell you, or most of those sites will tell you where you can take your dog or not. Wild animals, not a lot to worry about here in Australia necessarily. Snakes and spiders are probably your biggest threat, but truth is, I've been camping for, you know, 20-30 years, and I haven't come across any you know, significant snakes or spiders that I would worry about. You tend to not have too many of those when you're camping with dogs, because they tend to kind of, I don't know if it's the smell or the fire or whatever is going, but tends to steer away from it. Plus, if you're camping in designated camping areas, they're generally being fairly noisy, and most wildlife will stay well clear of those areas. Things that you do need to kind of worry about potentially are feral cats and wild dogs, and that's domestic dogs basically that have been released out in the wild. Some areas there's dingoes, you need to be worried about that. Just be aware of it basically. It's not necessarily a major threat. Like I said, you keep them tethered at night, they will make some noise and give you the opportunity to get up. But as a general rule, we don't have bears, tigers, all that sort of stuff, so most wild animals are not a problem. The wild animals that you need to be aware of or that may cause a problem are things like lyrebirds, kangaroos, that sort of stuff. Kangaroos have been known to get a little bit aggressive and territorial, but it's more a worry of the dog and how they're going to react to those animals, whether they're going to chase them and hurt them and, you know, try to attack them and that sort of thing. And that really comes back to you and the level of control that you have over your dog. Bindies, again, mentioned before with the boots, really important, especially in grasslands and that sort of stuff. You know, there's lots of different types of bindies in that as well, and a lot of those can cause problems, so constantly checking their paws to make sure that there's no bindies stuck or anything, spikes or thorns or anything like that. And take a brush. Actually, I've usually got a brush, or I have often got a brush in his car, a couple of brushes, and that's really important. I always brush him down daily. I try to go over their fur and make sure you get out all the bindies and spikes, and it's a good way of checking for ticks and that sort of stuff as well. Ticks is another little thing. You may want to get a tick collar depending on the areas you're going to. Here is not generally a major issue, but some areas are a little bit more exposed to ticks, so you just want to be aware of that. Make sure he's got all his worming tablets. You know, talk to your vet and your local pet shop and see what they've got around, and make sure that they're protected before you come out, hopefully. And lastly, it's really just making sure you've got some basic commands with your dog, and basic obedience. I think for me, it's always one of the most important things. You've got to have good control over your dog. The commands are, you know, like sit, drop. I've had my dog being attacked by other animals, and if I say drop, he will drop because he's trained to that level. You know, and look, sit and that sort of stuff, not necessarily important, but things like wait. And that means if I'm walking ahead and I tell him to wait, he will hold on for me, or and that's when he's not on the lead, obviously. But I do recommend you keep him on the lead more often than not, and he'll come, you know. And that's really just making sure that you've got, you know, if they look like they're about to take off, or you see another animal that or another camper's dogs, make sure that you can control them and get them back quickly. And you know, lastly, making sure that they're not going to bother other campers. Having a level of control. They're not going to go through their food and that sort of stuff. That's why I always have buckets for a lot of my stuff with lids on it, you know, to make sure that he can't get into my stash of food and that sort of thing. And look, that's pretty much covers a lot of it. If you've got any questions, please just send us a couple of comments or make a couple of comments. Happy to hear from you guys, and let's get a bit of a conversation going. If you like this video, please, I've got heaps more coming out every week, and camping with dogs and a range of other you know, adventure related topics. So please subscribe, hit that bell, and we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks guys.